Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Nothing for Nothing Leaves Nothing podcast. I am your host, Lewis. And today's topic, Lord, I'm probably going to get killed for this one. Women's state of mind. Let's talk about it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am Lewis, your host. And today's topic, like I said in the intro, man, I probably might get killed for this one. But we're going to talk about women's state of mind currently. And the reason we're having this topic is because, just as you scroll through social media, you see things and just the conversations that are being had, right, from a standpoint of just how women are feeling about some things or how people are responding to certain interactions or just topics that are out there that are being discussed, right? So in this episode, I want to dive into a couple of those, just going to lend my opinion to them. Like I said, I am no expert, like I always say, but just having a viewpoint and opinion on some things. And like I say getting killed, I might get killed by this podcast, but I say that jokingly because the general topics of things going to be talked about is not something where we're denigrating women or, we're putting women down or anything like that. I just don't roll that way. I was going to say I got a whole team back here. I don't roll that way. So, just like I said, just my thoughts and opinion on it. But so let's talk about it. So a lot of things I've seen on social media recently, when it comes to women and things of that nature, that has me kind of perplexed about a lot, and it gives me cause for pause to think about stuff, right? So if you watch or see things, you'll see stuff come up and it'll be clips, right? Whether it be a young lady going on a date with somebody and then that thing went viral, right? Because she was like, this guy took her here, she felt she should be taken here, and things of that, and that whole thing and how that went crazy. They had another lady that was on talking about how there's a fee, a post-date fee, and how this needs to be paid for and all that kind of stuff. And you see stuff like that, and it makes you sit there and wow, that's what we're doing now. That's how we are going about doing things. And the reason I pulled those two things in particular, because those are two topics where it makes people sit there and cause for pause and be like, man, these people are gold diggers, or they're seeking something that is not obtainable. So if you look at the scope of, you talking about interaction between the male and the female and how things have changed over the years, right? People are getting all kinds of plastic surgery, which that started happening when it started happening. And then because of plastic surgery, which that spins into a whole nother gamut of stuff, right? When it comes to you picking somebody or being in a relationship with somebody, a lot of things that come up is what makes you two compatible, right? That's one. And then you think about that, compatibility with somebody is one. So that's an aspect. And then from that aspect, it goes into, okay, what am I getting from this relationship? So that's your next aspect. And then your third one that you usually mostly look at is, okay, what can I see myself with this person for an extended period of time? And many topics have come up, right? Especially with the political stuff going on, things like that, stuff about abortion and how that shapes out who gets to pick, who gets to choose, and just a whole gamut of stuff. But then if you take that piece by itself and have conversations, you'll see a lot of folks having group conversations about, okay, why is that a big topic of concern? Why is there a lot of pushback and stuff like that on those particular topics? And like I said, these people go in, they deep dive into it. And just from an outside perspective, or I would say my perspective of looking at this stuff, a lot of times, and then you'll see ladies it's well, it's the guy's fault because, he did what he did, obviously, because it takes two, right? And then it turns to an aspect of dude finds out chick's pregnant, dude's ghost, right? Out the door, man, I'm trying to deal with this, I ain't trying to have no baby, blah, blah, and they gone. And then you get into a concept of people saying, well, people shouldn't lay down and have sex with each other until, you get married, which is true, right? If you're going to be doing that kind of stuff, which we all know this, we've been taught this from the time we were younger. You don't have sex with somebody until you're married or whatever, especially if you're a believer and stuff like that. But let's call a spade a spade. It doesn't happen, right? There's a lot of people having sex with each other and doing whatever. And I heard something recently where it came up where a person was like, people are quick to say, oh man, the guy left. And then the dude was like, well, let's look at the breakdown of the aspect, right? That breakdown was they weren't in a relationship from the get-go, right? So that caveat piece is always missed when they're like, oh man, this dude's getting these chicks pregnant and they taking off. They weren't in a relationship from the beginning. So is it really on the dude? And then you think about it from a female's perspective and you're like, okay, yeah, like we were messing around. This is the consequence of us messing around. Okay, we need to make an informed decision about what we're going to do, right? It shouldn't be solely on the chick. It shouldn't be solely on the guy, but they need to sit down and come to terms of like, what are they going to do, right? Because there is a whole another person that's going to be formed from those interactions, and that's usually what stuff goes south. And then you get into debate about, abortion and things of that nature and all that kind of stuff. So that's a whole gambit in itself. But that's one aspect. And then when you start digging and looking at just the interactions between women and men and how things have changed, right? Obviously things have changed because you had a whole feminist movement and that whole gambit of stuff. And you look at the aspect and how things are broken down now to the point where you get a lot of women that are like, they work, they have careers, they have very, very good careers where they're making very good money and a lot of times making more money than some dudes. So their outlook and their aspect on things is a little bit different as opposed to the way things were years and years ago when women weren't working like that. Women weren't heavy in the workforce, so where they were having a whole lot of high paying jobs and having a whole lot of opportunities to be able to do things and succeed in the way that they're succeeding now. So the dynamic was different. So a lot of times it was all on the guys to be able to provide, take care of the family, do all that kind of stuff. And then, as years and stuff changed, the dynamic switched and changed. So you have, case in point now, you have guys that are like, hey man, if this chick works, she making money, she taking care of stuff, man, I'm cool. I'm sitting back chilling and relaxing. To me, that is just freaking terrible by itself. But that's how people are rolling. That's how people are looking at women now as opposed to looking at somebody as a partner to grow, put stuff together, make stuff happen, whatever and so forth. So when you think about that, it's like you can't categorize all women just like people like black people, like being African American people would say all the time, like you can't categorize all African Americans the same, but people try to anyway, stereotype. And it's like you can't stereotype all women the same. So if you go through and you break it down, you have different, to me, and this is just my personal opinion, you have different breakdowns and segmented groups of women now as opposed to the way things were years and years ago. Lots of years ago, there was just, it was very, homemaker, taking care of stuff at the crib, husband working, whatever. And then as time, like I said, time and stuff going on and progressed, the mindset of stuff has changed. So now you have women that are very independent, very self-sufficient, and you have some that feel like they don't need a guy, some that feel like if they have a guy has to have all these things, and not think that the women that look at things and say a guy has to have this, and this is kind of where my focus wants to tend toward. And the reason I say that, and the reason I think my focus is leading there is because it's a trip for people to have an expectation of someone, right? And you have an expectation, but you're not mirroring what your expectation is. So if you have a lady and she's like, I want a guy that has this kind of job, he makes this kind of money, he needs to be able to do this for me, this for me, this for me. And I've seen it. You've seen on social media different clips and stuff like that, and you'll see dudes is like is one in particular, and I want to give credit to it. So if you hear it, I'm not stealing your stuff. Where the guy was like, chicks is like, dudes ain't crap, right? Like, if there are no decent dudes out there, all dudes are crap, they're all messed up, this and third. And then the guy's counter to that was, and if people have heard, they're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. His counter to that was, it's not that guys are crap, like there are decent dudes out there. The difference is, what are you doing to set yourself apart? Case in point being, the girl has a pretty face, nice body, whatever, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's cool, but what else? Because just like you're standing here that way, there are about 25 other chicks that look exactly the same, right? So what are you doing to set yourself apart? What is the difference between you and this person? Because you would take that same female, would take a guy and say, this guy ain't this guy ain't that. and you have an unreal expectation of somebody. Like they have unreal expectations for dudes to provide a certain amount, to do certain things, whatever, stuff like that. And I get it. Like as a man myself, obviously the way I was brought up and raised is as a man, you provide, you take care of stuff. You take, like if you're in a relationship, whatever, you provide. Whatever way, shape, or form that is, depending on the dynamic of your relationship. Some relationships is all on the guy to provide. Some in other relationships is not. It's a 50-50 split. You got a woman that's working, making decent money. You got a guy that's working, making decent money. They put their two together, and then that's how they grow and say, okay, hey, we're going to do this thing together. Let's progress and go through life and do the things we need to do. And then you have the aspects where some people just want to be taken care of. And I'm not going to sit here and say there's something wrong with that. But at the same time, you have to, it's like I said, about managing expectations. You have to be real about what you're seeking and what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to get. I saw another thing where a girl said she was dating this guy, and she said this guy was perfect. He did this, and this. Said that she literally said this dude set the bar for the next guy so high. So then everybody's asking the question like, if he was so good, why did you kick him? Why did you not stay with him? Why did you break up with him? It's like those concepts just don't make sense. Like having a concept of having an and it's like I said, it literally gets to expectations. Having an expectation of a guy to do certain things, and it's not obtainable. So if you set an expectation for something that's not obtainable, and then you're going to judge everybody based off of that expectation, how can you get upset with a person that is not meeting a standard that it might not be? You talking maybe a 1%, a 1%er type group of people that can actually meet that expectation. How is that supposed to work? Right? Like if you're looking at that as a woman, and like I said, when this gets released and the ladies here, hey, ladies, holla at me. Tell me what the deal is. Put your common stuff out there. But it's just a concept of looking and having an understanding. Like there's nothing wrong, and this is a true statement. Like I have friends of mine and guy friends that are with women, and dudes is like, I like the fact that she's independent, right? But there's levels to this, because two things can be true at the same time. You can have a woman that's independent, but you still have a woman that knows how to be a woman and let a guy play his role and do his thing as a man, as opposed to a woman taking heed and taking lead in everything, and then now there's a conflict and a battle because you have two people trying to be an alpha in a situation where there's an alpha and there's a beta, right? Like you have your alpha male, and then you got your beta. That's your girl. That's your one riding with you as you're going through life and doing stuff. And you have couples out there that hit this and it mesh and they rock and roll. But at the same time, like I said, it's about managing those expectations. Like you can't have an expectation of, and this goes for guys too. You can't have an expectation of a lady and you not doing nothing. So it goes both ways. So this podcast is related to women's mindset, but because that's the focus. But it goes for guys too. You can't sit there, be in a relationship with a woman where this woman is working, even if she's not working now. This is not even talking about a chick working a high paying job or doing something like she's working. She's taking care of stuff. In today's world, to be with people, and this is another thing that comes up, like if a person has a kid, how does that dynamic play into a situation? And it goes back to the same thing. It's about managing expectations. Do you have a plethora of guys out there that would say if a chick has if a woman has a child, they will not date or talk to this woman? Fine, that's not true. If that's what you believe, that's what your viewpoint is, cool. Don't get mad at a guy that says, okay, I see this lady, I understand who she is, what she's about, and what her situation is, and then they choose to be with that person, even though they have a kid. You can't sit there and blame that guy and say, oh man, you're a simp, or whatever the heck that term is that they're using now. You're doing X, Y, and Z because now you playing stepdaddy, you want to be somebody else's daddy. And it's about, like I said, that managing expectation. How do you know that this dude wants to play stepdaddy? He obviously met the woman, met her, and they click in some way, shape, or form. So the fact that she has a kid doesn't stifle the situation. It just changes the dynamic of it, because going into that situation, he would have to understand what the expectation is, as does she. She might have a kid, and her and the kid's father have a great relationship to where they co-parent, stuff is cool, there's no issue. So what does that mean? That means a guy going into a situation with a woman that has a child, and that's the situation, he's not going into that situation to play daddy. That's not his role. That's not his job, right? Now, that's not saying he sit there and he just let the kid go, go haywire and do all kinds of crazy stuff, but that's not his goal. That's not That's not his job. That's not his expectation. And that has to be set. Those things have to be set from the get-go so there's a clear understanding. And vice versa. If a woman chooses to get with a guy that has kids and he has the mother, I said baby mama, and I should have said that because I don't feel like that's a good term. But the mother of that person, the mother of that child, they have a decent relationship, they co-parent well, and everything is cool. He's not expecting the woman that's coming to come be with him to be the mother to his child because his child already has a mother. You see that dynamic changes things. And then you have the flip side, which is the crazy side of it, where people have kids and then they don't have a great co-parenting relationship with the other parent of that child. So that makes dynamic and changes. That's where most of the stuff that's put out there, especially online or whatever, stuff like that, when you start hearing about baby mamas and baby daddies and people not doing this and not doing that, that's when those situations come up. But for the most part, I've seen it in my own life. People might rag on it, but I've seen it. I've seen people come into a situation where they with a person that has a child and they step in, and if it's a situation where they need to play the father role, they play it and they do what they need to do because the person that they're with has a child. And I've seen the other aspect of it where they don't step in because they don't need to, or they just choose not to. So you have to understand what the dynamic is and what the situation is for that particular situation, right? So you can't sit there and get mad about, oh man, this dude's dumb because he takes his. No, man, you don't know what that situation is. I was listening to a sermon probably about over a month ago, and the pastor was talking about how, and this is the thing that comes up because like you'll see somebody get into a relationship or be in a relationship and things will be going on, and people will say, oh man, like, you need to leave this person. You don't need to be with this person. You need to get away from this person, whatever, stuff like that. And the pastor on the sermon, and he was breaking it down. He was like, you should never do that to somebody that's in a relationship that's having issues. And here's why. The reason you don't do that is you do not know, despite all the craziness going on, what that person is providing to the other person. So you're telling this person to leave a situation, and this doesn't count for situations where it's an abusive situation. If somebody's beating on you, hitting on you in an abusive situation, that's very dangerous. You do get out of those situations when somebody's like, hey, you wise them, get out of those situations. But if it's a situation where they have their little bickering, arguing back and forth or whatever, stuff might not be happening the way one person wants to or whatever, it's one of those situations where if you have friends and stuff around you, your friend shouldn't be telling you to leave a situation. They shouldn't. Because like I said, they don't know what that person is providing to you. And a lot of times that's not something that's easily conveyed between two people to be like, what this person's providing, this is and the third. You shouldn't have to explain that to people anyway. But when you look at that concept of those dynamics of, like I said, people judging situations from an outside view and not having a clear understanding of what it is, that's where you can run into potential issues. Circling back, like I said, having expectations, right? Having manageable expectations of a person and what you're expecting from a situation. I've said recently for a good while now, one of my neighbor buddies, I remember when we was in A school, and we was 23 years old, we was young, whatever, and we had a friend, and he was talking to multiple girls, which obviously we know that's a no-no, ladies, and people get upset about having multiple women. I get it, I got it, it's wrong, no issues there. But he told a friend of ours, he was like, look, man, he said, why are you doing what you're doing? He was like, look, man, I'm just trying to get mine and this and third. And he ended up saying to him, he was like, you know what your issue is, man? He said, you lie too much. And dude was like, what you mean? Like, I'm just, I'm spitting game. Right? And the dude was like, you lie too much. He said, that's why you keep having problems. He said, you know what you need to do? Honesty. He said, honesty is the best lie. And I've said it to people several times. People are like, well, that concept makes no sense. I'm like, it actually does. The premise of that statement is honesty is the best lie. So what that means is make your expectations known from the get-go. Right? So, ladies, if you see a guy and you're talking to a guy, let him know what the expectation is. A lot of times situations happen and ladies are known for doing it, so are guys, but we focus on the ladies right now, where you're going to a situation with a guy and the expectations are off. So you have a first date or whatever, you're talking and you're kind of putting some stuff out there, but you're not giving him the real. But in your head, you have this concept of you want this, you want things done this way, you want stuff set up this way, you want stuff done a certain way. The dude has no clue. So now you're judging this guy based off of what your expectation is, and he has no clue what concept, what the expectations are. So he can't meet the standard that you set because it's an unreal standard. If that makes sense, right? If you're understanding that. So make the intentions known from the get-go. So if you want a guy that has a certain thing, most women, if that's the case, they won't even talk to a dude that ain't even nowhere close to that. So now, if that's the case and you're not talking to dudes, but you're putting out there like, man, men need to do this, men need to step up, y'all need to do better, y'all need to do X, Y, and Z, this and the third. And it's like, okay, cool, you can have that expectation, but then it's like, it gets back to that concept, what are you bringing to the table? For years and years, the dynamic has shifted so much that's kind of the norm now. I remember a while back, I was asking folks, and just talking to people, people that I socialize with or whatever and talk to. I was asking folks, I was like I would ask the female partners of mine, I would ask them, I was like, hey, let me ask you a question. I was like, do dudes approach you when you're out? Right? And the response I was getting, I was like, dude, this is wild. I like asking these kind of questions and digging into stuff because it gives just a concept of how stuff is going on in the world. Because I know when I was at a certain age and would go out, how stuff went. So now you're asking these questions and it's like, no, either one, dudes don't approach at all, which is one. Two, if they do approach, they approach wrong. Or three, what I heard is people don't go out by themselves like they used to. Everybody goes out in groups. So if you're out in a group, it's a little bit more difficult, I guess, for people to approach a group to talk to a particular girl if there are a bunch of girls in a group. I guess that's how that works. But then another concept that came up was if a guy comes to talk to you, right? And this is, like I said, we talk to the ladies because this is about the ladies. If a guy comes to talk to you and you're not, like I said, whatever your expectation is, he's not meeting it or whatever and stuff like that. Cool. He's not on the level to where you're like, okay, I will entertain this. And it's an environment where there are multiple ladies around or whatever. And he goes to approach you, he does thing, whatever. You're like, nah, I'm not interested, whatever, blah, blah. Then after he gets the clarification from you that you're not interested, he moves on to another person. Can you get upset? And I heard back that the person was like, yeah, I would get upset. I was like, well, why? And the person was like, well, it's about the chase. It's like, how does that make sense? If you made a clear indication that you were not interested in somebody, how can you expect, once again, expectations, right? How can you expect somebody to chase you if they don't know that they're supposed to? It don't make sense. Like, the concept don't make sense. Those expectations of what a standard is and what people are expecting from another person, sometimes, like I said, it's like they're playing Marco Polo with the person that they're talking to. Another thing that comes up now, right, is women have said that they want dudes to be sensitive, right? They want dudes to be a little bit softer in certain things, whatever, stuff like that. Or you go into a situation where, and guys have this concept too, but like I said, you might see a little bit more towards women at times where they may have an expectation and they lower their expectation just for the particular person that they're talking to. And then they get upset about what you're receiving from this person because you dropped your expectation. So like, that's like if there's a lady and you're talking to a guy and you know that this guy has another person, like has a person over here, right? But you're upset because you're like, why am I not getting this? Why am I not getting this? Why am I not getting this? And it's because you lowered your expectation, right? You put a standard out there that was acceptable to bad behavior. So if you make bad behavior acceptable, you're going to get bad behavior. If that's what you're allowing, that's what you get. Which is not a justification at all if a dude is out there, doing X, Y, and Z. But if he makes it clear to, like I said, honesty is the best lie. If he makes it clear what his intention is and you choose to say yes to that, and then later on down the road you switch, that's where you might run into an issue at, because the guy's first inclination is going to be, well, I told you from the get go, this is what it is, and you said cool. Everybody has a right to change their mind. If you change your mind, you can just exit yourself from that situation. So if you listen and like you see all these different concepts, but everything comes back to the expectation of what people have set and what people expect in those particular dynamics, in those particular situations. But you have some ladies that are functioning now, like I said, like in the capacity of a guy. Like they're like I said, they're independent. They got their own stuff. They're taking care of stuff. They have their own thing. So a lot of times you'll see, and you've seen this come across too, where women's like, I don't need a man for this. This is whatever the situation is. And then when things will come up and they're like, well, how are they looking at us this way? Why do guys talk down to us about X, Y, and Z? And it's like, it's because you're presenting a role that's not really fit for a woman. And this is not some old school women should be in the kitchen, pregnant and barefoot mindset. It's about the fact that we have roles for a reason, right? As a male, you have a role of doing certain things, being a provider, taking care of things, whatever, so forth. And as women, you have a role of, the nurturing and the mother and all that kind of stuff. Now, that's not saying that you can't get the roles to mesh, because people do it all the time. People have functional relationships like consistently where the roles are clearly defined. So you can't have a woman trying to fill a man's role while she has a man there, right? Because you're going to clash, you're going to have issues. But as a guy, you can't be with a woman and then want to be in woman role. Like you want to sit at the crib, relax, kick your feet up, and take care of the home while she out there working. Now, in some forms of fashion, if that's the dynamic, that's the dynamic. If it works, it works. My aunt always says, if you like it, I love it. So that concept, I guess, would apply to that one. Like, hey, man, if that's what you want to do, by all means, do what you feel you need to do. But when you think about it, like I said, it's just one of those things where it's like, man, like that is a trip. It is a trip. So a lot of times you hear concepts come up where they talk about guys being deadbeats, right? Or whatever the situation is. People get divorced and stuff like that. And obviously we know if you are a person that believes in God, you know that God doesn't believe in divorce. But we are free to make the decisions that we want to make. And then if that is the case, you have to be accountable to God for the things that you do and how you move. So you think about people getting in situations, like I said, like the one earlier, where it's like people, they might quick to jump on a guy and say, oh man, this dude's a piece of trash because this chick got pregnant and he left. Well, they weren't in a relationship to begin with. They were sleeping around, one night stands, or whatever the situation was, and then she ended up getting pregnant. So you can't, I wouldn't say expect somebody to be in a relationship, but as a guy, if you lay down and get a girl pregnant, you need to be a man about your stuff and freaking take care of that child. Because I'll put that out there, I don't believe in the whole abortion thing at all. Like, if you lay down and create a child, you need to be able to take care of that child, or you need to take care of that child. Now, if it's a situation where you both are unable to take care of a child, then I say put the child up for adoption. Don't kill a child. Like, that's still a person. I just don't believe in that at all, but that's just my personal viewpoint on that. But even with that, like I said, it's situations out there, man, where it's like, how does this stuff break down, right? Like, how do you manage expectations? And for the ladies, man, like, I'm gonna talk some real stuff. Like, even when managing your expectations, you don't need to settle, but be realistic, if that makes sense. It's not about, well, I want a guy to provide X, Y, and Z. That's fine. You can expect a guy to provide, because that's what men should do. That's what we are supposed to do, is provide and take care of a household. But if you getting with a person, you making X, Y, and Z, and this dude is working at McDonald's, you having the expectation of him to provide, it's probably not realistic. However, as a guy, if you, the part that trips around with dudes, let me talk about this real quick. There are a lot of dudes out there that are with women, they're comfortable, and the woman is striving to do more and to do a lot of things, right? And the person that they with is not. So people look at that and people are quick to judge, right? People see it. People, your friends still around you, look at them like, man, this motherfucker ain't doing nothing. Like, what's the deal? And people stay in situations like that because most of the time, for ladies, they generally do care. When they care hard. And a lot of times, which is, I would say how it should be, depending on most situations, is obviously if you're having a situation like that, you're trying to work it out because it's not something, it's like not something egregious happened, like the person cheated or, you know, they went out and had another kid or whatever, stuff like that. But it's more so it gets into a lack of motivation. Stay tuned, that might be a podcast. For just having a motivation to just do stuff, like to do better. I don't think people should be cool with just being status quo. But like I said, I'll save that for another podcast. But when you look at these situations, it's like the expectations. Like, expectations kill a lot of stuff. Like, you can go into a situation, if you go into a restaurant because you heard this restaurant was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and your expectations are set so high, then you get in there, you're like, man, this restaurant was trash, right? And then people are like, well, why was it trash? Like, this restaurant's great, I eat there all the time. And it's like, it was the way y'all built it up, man, it didn't meet the expectation. So that's your viewpoint, that's your opinion. But when it comes to the ladies, man, it's like, it's a trip because, like, the expectations that some women have, and a lot of it's based off, and like I said, that's just a worldly thing now, where it's like people want the glitz and the glamour and all that stuff. And like a woman to say she wants a guy that makes six figures. Well, most dudes that make six figures work a lot. So if that's the case, unless they got some, you know, some tech wise where it kind of just works for itself, most dudes that make six figures grind a lot. They're working consistently, working a lot during the week, during the weekends, in the evening time when they should be chilling and relaxing. They still working, like they're constantly working. And then that turns into an issue where a lady will be like, you don't spend no time, you don't give me the time that I need, and this and that. And it's like, this is what you wanted. In order for people to have that level of success, unless they're an athlete or some craziness, they have to work, grind. Like, they are out there pushing it 24/7, putting that work in, and trying to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. And most dudes that do that, at some point, most of those guys really don't, especially if they got it young. Most of those dudes don't settle down too later in life because they want to make sure everything is established and running. If they're on the upstart and the uptick, they're running 24/7, grinding, trying to get it. And you have to have an understanding and a realization of when you expect certain things come with that. If you can't understand that, you're going to always be in a position where you're sitting there feeling less than, or feeling like the person doesn't care or doesn't want to be there or whatever the situation is. But on the flip side, you have everything you want, right? You got all the cars, you got the jewelry, you got the bags, the clothes, you're taking the trips, you're going and doing all that stuff. And that's the world that a lot of females now live in, where that's their expectation. And it's like, you can't have an expectation of being with a person that's making six figures or whatever, and you working at McDonald's, right? Like, what are you bringing to the table? Most guys now, especially highly successful guys, when they look at ladies or, you know, female partners, the good ones anyway, because you got some schmucks that are out there that just want to freaking be in control of everything and run stuff like that. But ladies, you got to think about that, man. Like, if you working at Mickey D's and you talking about something you want to do that makes six figures, what are you bringing to the table? That's a clear question. So I say in closing, expectations have changed the women's mindset a lot. I believe the whole feminist movement, all that kind of stuff, kind of changed some things too. I won't get into that too much because I'm not that well versed in it. I know some things, but not well enough to be out here putting that stuff on the podcast. So, like I said, I say in closing, ladies, know your worth, obviously. Manage your expectations. And if you have an expectation of something, make sure that you're bringing something to the table as well. We're probably going to revisit this again, talking about the fellas at some point. And just how guys move a little crazy, but stay tuned for that. I appreciate you guys for listening. Like, listen, subscribe, share it with your friends, and I will catch you guys on the next go around. I holla.